In this video, we're going to discuss the nuances of why a strong acid has a weak conjugate base and why a weak base has a strong conjugate acid. First, let's take an example. HCl, hydrochloric acid, is a strong acid. In your stomach, it completely dissociates and floods the environment with H+ ions. That's why it can digest food so effectively. In contrast, an acid like acetic acid, found in vinegar, is a weak acid. Even if you had the same number of acetic acid molecules, very few H+ ions would be released, so the solution would stay much less acidic. Imagine if your stomach only had a weak acid like acetic acid. It wouldn't digest food very well at all. So strong and weak aren't about how dangerous something sounds. It's about how much H+ ions are freely available in the solution. The terms strong and weak acids and bases can be confusing and sometimes counterintuitive. A helpful way to think about it is in terms of how well an acid or base does its job. Acids donate protons and bases accept protons. So, a strong acid is very good at giving away protons, while a strong base is very effective at accepting them. Now let's summarize some important relationships. A strong acid has a weak conjugate base. A weak acid has a strong conjugate base. A strong base has a weak conjugate acid. A weak base has a strong conjugate acid. It's worth pausing here to explore why a strong acid produces a weak conjugate base. This is a fundamental concept that helps deepen your understanding. The conjugate base is simply what's left after an acid donates its proton. And whether it's strong or weak depends on how much it wants to take a proton back. If the conjugate base is strong, meaning it really wants to grab a proton, that would mean the original acid was weak, because it struggled to give up H+ in the first place. But if the conjugate base is weak, meaning it doesn't really want H+ ion back, that tells us the original acid was strong because it easily gave away its proton and doesn't look back. In short, a strong acid has a weak conjugate base. A weak acid has a strong conjugate base. It's an inverse relationship. The better the acid is at giving away H+ ions, the worse its conjugate base is at wanting it back. At this point, you might be wondering, why doesn't the conjugate base want the H+ ion back? Recall from the previous video, the more stable the conjugate base is, the less it wants to grab a proton. And what makes a conjugate stable? Factors such as resonance stability, electronegativity, and the inductive effect. Go back and revisit the earlier video and see if you're able to connect all the dots.